Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 40 of the Women in Vinyl podcast. You just heard Long Way by pop artist and former Gotta Groove press op Chyla Hope off her new record, Damn Feelings, out June 9th on Wax Mage Records. Find more at www.chylahope.com. Today we have Women in Vinyl fam Heath Gmucs joining us. Heath is the creator of Wax Mage Records and press op for over a decade at Gotta Groove Records in Ohio. In this episode, we will cover everything you need to know about how your records are pressed. We've already talked about the first steps, cutting and plating. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually pressing these hot plastic babies, aka your records. Hang in through the first part, which is a little choppy. Things smooth out with the connection after the ad. Thanks for joining us again, Heath. It's been a while. Yay!
Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you, to see you guys and talk to you again.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about how records are pressed. So could you give us a quick overview of the process once you have stampers and it's headed to the machine?
Yeah. So when we get the stampers in at Gotta Groove, we give the stampers a once over. We have to back sand them to make sure that they're free and clear of debris on the backside. We load them up into the press. We pour some material into the hopper. And the material just looks like little pellets, like little tiny lentils. We heat that material up to about 300 degrees or so in the extruder. It gets pushed into a little cup that makes a biscuit or a puck. Depending on what you want to call it. We call it biscuits because we like biscuits. It gets pushed into that little cup to make a biscuit, and it gets brought up to the dies with the A label on the bottom and the B label on the top. It gets dropped off at the dies. The dies will close and press the hot material at right around 300 degrees for about 10 seconds at 1,500 pounds per square inch. Pushes out a little bit of flash on the ends, enough for the grippers to grab onto it after the 25-second cooling time, drops it onto a trimmer table, and then it gets trimmed, make nice clean edges, and it gets dropped onto a stack. That whole cycle, when I say cycle time, the cycle time is the heating and cooling process, so that can take anywhere between 30 and 40 seconds. So every 30 or 40 seconds, we're dropping a record onto the stack. Within that automatic Hamilton press, we have 3 records in one state of production. So we'll have the biscuit, we'll have the records in the dies, and then we'll have the record getting trimmed in the trimmer table. So that's pretty much the whole process. While the vinyl isn't technically cured for another 8 hours, we can pull that record that was just dropped on the stack that is basically a 40-second old record and drop a needle on it and listen to it for any imperfections, any pops, any ticks, any scratches that may have occurred, or any imperfections in the stampers. And that's pretty much the whole process of making a record. And then we watch that happen from 9 p.m. on Sunday night to 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon. So
Awesome. Our
yeah,
Hot Plastic Babies. That's our band
that's
name.
it. That's it. When do we start the band?
Why do you think it is that some stampers are different than others in the machines?
I think it has to do with how much music is on a side, the depth at which the lacquers were cut. Has sometimes stuff to do with the plating, the chemical makeup. Oh, he's trying to join. The chemical makeup of what's in the electromagnetic plating baths can make a little bit of a difference. I think the biggest thing is how much music is on the side and how loud that it can be cut. And I'm still learning about all this stuff too. Gotta Groove just bought Nipro from California. We moved it to Columbus, so now we are Gotta Groove electroplating in Columbus, Ohio. So I can't wait to go visit and learn some more about electroplating.
Did some of the Nipro folks come to Cleveland too? Like, was it like a relocation or was
Yeah.
it like a location?
Yeah, the owner of the company came through and he hung out for about a week in Columbus to help folks out, and a lot of the crew came through just to help us get started and didn't make that learning curve so huge. But while we were still learning, they've been super helpful in helping us get started down there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it 1500 psi for all of the different mold sizes, like 7s, 10s, and 12s?
We don't have any 10-inch presses. I'd love to have one of those someday, but we don't have one right now. We do have a 7-inch press, and we also have a 180-gram press.
Yep.
The 7-inch press we usually run in about 1100 psi. We're not squishing a 180-gram biscuit into a 140-gram record on that. So we're basically squishing. We don't need that much pressure to squish a little tiny, 90-gram biscuit into a 45-gram record. So yeah. It's a little less for a 7-inch. And I assume that it'd be, in between that for a 10-inch. And the 180-gram, we're still pressing right around 1500 psi.
And are you doing 7s and 12s at the same time? Because going into like the actual like factory setup, there's a boiler and a chiller, and then they have like infrastructure that connects to all of those presses. So
yes,
do you notice that there's a differential in like how the machines operate if you're trying to do two different sizes? So one machine is taking like a different amount of its like seam, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think mostly for us, if there's any we'll call weight fluctuation or steam fluctuation, it's usually comes from the boiler, not necessarily the machine, unless there's some a valve starting to go on the machine. Then that's when if we see, we'll usually see a little bit of fluctuation on all the machines throughout the day. It's just the nature of the beast using a boiler system. Definitely with the water, with the chiller, trying to keep the water at a consistent temperature, we do see some fluctuation in that, just because of the ambient temperatures that we work in. So we'll shut down for lunch, and then the chiller has time to regroup and make the water nice and cold. So when we get back from lunch, we got to immediately turn all of our water times down 2 or 3 seconds. Otherwise, we're just going to start making stitched records, basically, or records. So immediately we know that's just what we have to do after break.
Do you see like humidity and weather playing a part in that as well? Like how, interesting.
So with humidity plays a huge part, but we see a lot of the issue with the humidity on print. So we'll have to set up heat guns for the center labels while they're running on press, because if there's any humidity on those labels, they start peeling off inside the press. With those higher temperatures, it heats our water up, so we'll have longer times for cooling in the summer. Whereas in the winter, we struggle a bit with stitching because it's so cold outside. The water stays at a much lower temperature. So, and it can reduce sometimes, but that in and of itself can also cause problems too.
And Heath, can you expand on stitching? I know that it's a term that those of us that have worked in the industry and in plants are familiar with, but can you describe what stitching would be to our listening audience that are wrapped with attention currently?
Yes. So stitching, if you look at a record and you see what looks like grooves that have almost like someone is like stitched thread through it, it just like looks like the little hyphenated dots like through a groove. Stitching. Sometimes it's audible, sometimes it isn't. It's just like a visual, and a lot of places will pass that as long as it's audible. Just a client, if they're willing to go with that. So stitching is when the record sticks to the stamper when the dies open up. So the sticking can happen either the record is too hot and you need to cool it down a little more, or if the record is too cold and you need to back off on your water time.
Right.
Finding that medium is the difficult part. So it can also be stitching is I don't know if we talked about like it being stamper related too. So if there's a lot of information on this one side of a disc and the grooves are really cut really close together, we have a hard time getting the vinyl in those grooves. Right. So we have to increase the temperature of our material. We'll have to increase the quantity we're using. So instead of 180 gram biscuit, maybe it's going to be 185 or 190 gram biscuit. So more material squishing out. Right. And then it goes back to, I was just talking about this yesterday, making sure that the eyes are closed while the eyes have flash coming out of them while it is still in the heat cycle. So if your water kicks on, your cooling time kicks on, and you're not seeing any flash come out yet, you're probably going to have stitching on your lead-ins because those are the hardest grooves to fill in the record pressing process. Because everything starts in the middle, this big, and then it just expands out from there. So stitching, sometimes we invert stampers, sometimes we spin stampers. Okay. Sometimes stampers do a whole nother press, and it works fine. So it truly is still, I think, a mystery of us who are operating in the record industry. Yeah.
Well, and you've been pressing records for 15 years, right? So I mean, you've tried.
Well, I'll be 13 years this year.
13, yeah.
But it feels like 15. Yeah.
That you had to learn all of that kind of like on the fly, right, from the very, very get-go. So, I mean, you're kind of one of the best people to talk to about it because you've got those like abilities to pivot and say, oh, we're seeing this. Why don't we do that? Oh, it's this. Why don't you try that? But how hard was that information to kind of like get on the uptake? Did you have somebody that was like leading you down the process?
We didn't have a whole lot of help at the beginning. We had some troubleshoot manuals. We had some manuals that came with the Hamiltons. We reached out as much as we possibly could within the industry to find folks that would help us out. And at the very beginnings, I wasn't involved a whole lot in that process. Mostly I was just trying to keep my hair attached to my head at that point. So it was more Vince Sr., Vince Jr., and House who were really instrumental in like getting our stuff together at the very beginning of Gotta Groove. And I try to share as much information as I can with other record pressing plants that are starting up. So I have touch with a few folks, just trying to help out and offering like whatever information I have. And I'm always curious too, because maybe they're doing something that I could learn from too. So keeping the communication open and back and forth is like kind of everyone be successful. And I think that's what we all want in the industry is to continue to stick around and keep making records.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about molds and how those are different for different machines. What actually happens in those when, you're talking about these different cycles?
So what happens? So a cycle time is the time that it takes for the guys to preheat, to press the record during the heat time, and then to cool the record during cooling time. So we can have in the industry and production industry, you want to have the low cycle time possible, as well as the best product possible. Finding the happy medium is the game, is the fun part. So within the dies, what happens is inside of the dies are like hollowed out. So there's an inlet that shoves steam in, and it like runs kind of like in a zigzag pattern that kind of works its way around through the pipe, starting at the center and then hits the outside and then hits an outlet pipe. So it'll push steam through there first and heat it up, and then it'll push the steam out with water to cool it down. That's basically what's happening. So for a 140 gram record, we have 140 gram dies. So the profile of those dies are a lot thinner than they are for 100 gram record. They're going to be a lot deeper. So there's room that thick. With 7-inch dies, they're just little tiny fellows, and they kind of have the same depth profile as a 100 gram mold. So that's kind of all I know about that. I do know that you don't want to press any screws into them.
Yeah.
That was going to be my other question, because you have to change molds, do you not?
Occasionally, the idea is to never have to change a mold,
Right.
by taking really, really good machine, and making sure like everything's like in its place and where it should be. Occasionally, shit happens, and we've had a pinhole appear, which will start water and a bunch of stock marks on it, and create rust. So we have to pull the die, and we'll get it resurfaced, get it resurfaced, and get it back. Occasions where it's super rare that it happens anymore. But we had a bolt into some dies, and it's really sad and expensive mistake to make. Some of the dies are salvageable and resurfaceable, but depending on the size of the bolt, sometimes they're not. We've been trying to, I think molds and dies industry, getting those right now been weird, difficult, and I'm not sure of like what the holdup is or the backup is, but I know there's been a lot of record pressing plants who are a little bit stressed out about getting molds. So we're doing ours. I got banned from pressing razor blades into records for a while, even though I never damaged the dies by pressing razor blades into it. But I get it. Mad respect. Eliminate every issue that we can to save the dies. So.
Yeah. So when you talked briefly about like the melting point of black, but as we all know and love, you do a lot more than black, my sweet. So can you talk briefly about the different melting points of different colors and why black is the superior medium, and we should all just make black records so that we don't have to have problems anymore? Or
I honestly, I think the natural material is far more superior to black. I don't know if you worked with any of that, but the natural material is pigment and carbon free of like anything. It's just like milk is what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's just like the raw, naked vinyl, after it's manufactured. And then I think what a lot of things are doing is manipulating that chemically to make the translucent colors, to make black, to make all the different colors. Looking for different colors, and it's within like maybe 10 degrees sometimes, but we found that it's probably the noisiest stuff, and glow in the dark is probably the noisiest.
Sorry, which
just
one's
because
the
of whatever. Glow in the dark,
yeah,
is noisy, and white is noisy. White tends to sting our stampers after a while. So we have a lot of colors that we do mix with white.
right.
Like say light blue, so you're mixing blue and white together.
Right.
That'll end up like staining and damaging stampers. As far as heating, yeah, it's usually different, a few degrees there, but finding that perfect spot is what I do like to see is when I'm extruding material that's at my extruder for like 5 minutes or so, not like a nice smooth material. That way I know it's like heated all the way through. Like when I'm doing color change and I'm just extruding, it comes out lumpy because it's not fully melted. So if you're trying to work with that at the dies, I feel like you're making the machine more work it's intended to, and you should be delivering a hot output before it, before it gets. So
Yeah. And what about regrind? How is that? Do you find that it works any differently or works better in some instances?
Material with our 180 gram material, we'll use a mix of regrind and virgin material. I don't think it affects the sound quality. Like we've done random colors, all regrind colored material. And I personally haven't found any audible difference in a black 100% regrind to a black record that's 100% virgin material. I do know that the goal, we work really, really hard to keep our material planet free. So we're doing like different regrinds. We have separate grinders for color, clean out maybe pretty pure color, and do those color clean outs. But we keep everything pretty clean, and keep everything free, sandpaper and stuff like that. So I know a lot of folks will say that material sounds better than material, but I just haven't heard it myself. So
I mean, other than the sticker, how is anybody going to know whether it's regrind or
exactly?
Oh,
yeah.
A lot of folks ask me, they're like, well, what's bigger than a 180 gram record? And I was like, the weight.
You're right.
But I think the main difference between standard weight record and 180 gram record is that I feel like 180 gram is a little more mishandling than a standard weight record could. So you have like nice flat. It's going to last longer, and I think it's going to last longer just on your shelf. It's going to sound better longer. I think. I think right off the rip, if you drop the needle on a 180 gram record and same on a 140 gram record, I don't think you're really going to hear. I think there's audible difference there. I think it's more in longevity and feel.
Have you received your teal box in the mail? No, not jewelry, your high-fidelity Eargasm earplugs. Eargasm high-fidelity earplugs keep your hearing protected in style, but they also recognize that their products aren't only for hearing protection and are widely used for people's mental health and well-being in noisy situations. How do these help you in your daily life? From noise sensitivity, overstimulation, or ear protection, they're the brand for you. Eargasm has a great deal with 10% off your order using, you guessed it, discount code Women in Vinyl at checkout. www.eargasm.com. And now, back to the episode. So I think something we've talked about before too that could be helpful to discuss is like, how much of a pain is it when people have a bunch of different variants and you have to like empty out a hopper or change colors over?
Well, and let's talk about like actually how much clock time that is.
Well, so when we have a color change within a job, we have a QA department that'll come out and they'll give us a number on our press. And they'll be like, I need 50 more records. And so as we get down to the wire on that, we actually will start our color change within those 50 records. So we'll end up emptying out the hopper, and then we'll back it with the same color, but with virgin material. So that helps us get the dust and everything out of there while the press is still running. And then as long as everything's going good with QA and records are passing, like we don't have anything to worry about, we will just dump the next color right in there. What ends up happening is it'll give us a transition record or two. Then we'll pause the press. We'll heat up the extruder a whole lot, and then extrude some material. We'll probably go through about 15 pounds of material to do that color change, and it should I think it takes anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes depending on the color you're trying to get to. What we try to do at our shop is line everything up so that we minimize color changes from job to job on a press. It's inevitable that you're going to have to do it. But also when there are multiple colors in a run, that we try to color shift to things that are going to be easy. So like going from black to white's kind of a pain. We've done it. It's not easy. But going from black to clear with black swirl is a breeze. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't really even have to do much purging after that. We just let it ride through the transition records. So we try to set things up so that it's efficient and productive. Doing a color change and a job change can run us about 30 minutes or so, but keeping those times down and staying efficient and keeping everything within reach is really what it's about.
Well, and with the efficiency thing that you're talking about, Heath, did you guys as a plant change your minimums to kind of buffer that like downtime?
Change our minimums.
Like minimum run numbers. Like, because I know some plants were going, like they used to offer 100 and now they don't offer 100 anymore. Now it's like 300 or 500 as their minimum.
We still offer 100.
Yeah.
We want to be able to press records. I mean, not just for, like the big distribution companies and larger labels. We still like to press records for our local music scene, our regional music scene. Yeah. And sometimes all they want is 100 records, and we want to be there for that.
No, that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you find that like certain labels with differences in color, like maybe they're printed with less ink or more ink or whatever, have different reactions within the press that cause you to maybe have more waste?
So there's been like some weird paper shortage. I don't know if y'all heard about it, but it's
now?
Yeah, right? No, I don't know. It's just really bizarre. So we're like trying to find the paper that we used to use and not have any issue with different companies. So we're working with a label, our old label manufacturer, and I think I don't know if they went out of business or not, or why we're not getting labels from them anymore. But maybe we just need too many at this point, and we were kind of overwhelming them. So we've been like trying to find other places that can make center labels for us. I don't know if it's the quantity of ink. So when we get our labels from the printer, we have to bake them again for another 24 hours to make sure that they're completely dry. The colors on the labels that we do have some issues with are red and yellow. So if it's a really red label, we can have some troubles with it. The yellow we found can be a little sticky and problematic. But I feel like I haven't really seen any of those problems lately. We're really gotten down to a science with like how long and at what temperature we're baking the labels that we're getting in. We're working with, I think, 3 different center label printers right now. We're trying to do most of our label cutting in-house. So we have a few machines where we're cutting them and then we're drilling the center of them. So we're just getting them printed and then we bake them after that. But
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I don't think it's the weight of the paper, because we've used different weights of paper. We actually have, I take that back. We actually have a lot more trouble with a lighter weight paper than we do with a heavier weight paper. But I think I think in baking them, the ink has really become kind of a non-issue lately.
Yeah, I mean, I know that that's something that we find, like, we are also using a new label vendor, and we're seeing that we're running out of labels sooner. And so that's been something that, we're trying to figure out what the difference is if we need to bake them longer.
Is that out of label scrap or?
For the vendor?
I mean, on your end, if you're running out of labels sooner, is it?
So yeah, that they're like, we're either getting double labels or they're like not connecting. Like one of them will kind of like peel off.
Yep.
So, or just fall out in the machine.
Yep.
So just that kind of a thing. And we're trying to figure out like why initially we were getting 10% overs, and then now we're trying to get like additional to that to try to see what's going on. But yeah, it's just been a learning curve. So
for sure, we could we'll chat outside of here.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what I know.
yeah.
I know the headache so
well. All right, so what are some of the pressing flaws that you guys look out for besides stitching? And like, what are the press ops doing when stitching or non-fill happen in order to fix it?
So for stitching, initially we'll bump the water up, and I would say 95% of the time that's the fix. To keep the record from sticking to the stamper, you cool it off a little bit more. So we'll just dial up the water in half-second increments and see what works. As far as there's dishing that can happen. Sometimes we get dishing and stitching at the same time, which is a head scratcher. But dishing is when the record is coming off a little bit too warm. So the center isn't fully cooled off. The center is the thickest part of the record. So if that's not cooled enough, then the record will kind of dish, or has like I say, like an oil can in the center where it kind of pops a little bit. And there are occasions where you can kind of bend that out within like the first hour of manufacturing it. But we try to avoid that at all costs, because that can be problematic down the road when the records start to ship to the customers from the client, depending on, the heat that they have to endure in the mail truck. You know what I mean?
All right.
So some of the other stuff that we deal with is warping, which is usually if the record is too cold, it'll do like a saddle warp. If it's real bad, it looks like a Pringles potato chip. Basically, that's the saddle warp that I'm talking about. So that's a record that's being pressed too cold, so we would turn the water down. Or in some cases, we can turn the heat cycle up to combat if our water is too cold, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we're trying to balance the temperature of the dyes, basically, is what we're doing. So if I have hotter dyes, it's going to take colder water to cool them off, basically.
Right.
So you kind of have to work within your ambient things. Some of the stuff that happens is during the setup where we'll get like a stock mark and it just looks like a little divot in the record. What that is actual debris between the stamper and the die that creates a little divot in the record. That can sometimes happen also mid-run. If something on the back of the stamper breaks loose, sometimes it can be a plating issue. Sometimes it can be any moisture under the die. So if you end up, like I was talking about earlier, like a little pinhole in the die and you kind of got a leak. Sometimes you can have just like a burr that gets stuck. So like we'll be doing test presses and I'm like, darn it, I have a stock mark. You take the stamper out, sand out the stock mark, and then put the stamper back in, and you have the stock mark right next to it, exactly the same. And you're like, what the heck? So that's when like you have to sand the die down for that.
And let's not
sometimes
forget that you have to do this, like you have to look at them every 40 seconds.
Yeah, basically. So our press operators will check about every 10th record or so.
Yeah.
That drops from the press. So, and it's just a visual check to make sure our labels are still the right labels and on the correct side, and that there's no stock marks that kind of showed up out of nowhere, and that there's no scratches, visual scratches or anything. So we can't hear anything audibly out there. So which is why we have a QA department that listens to roughly every 25th record that goes through the shop. So
well, and that's the thing, right? Like it's a total bummer to have like record customers be like, oh well, QA just needs to do a better job, or like these pressing operators. I'm just like, have you ever been to a pressing plant? Do you know how chaotic it is? And like, I'd like to see you inspect a full record every 40 seconds there, Joe. Like,
yeah, it's a lot. It's for the press operators, it's real hot and heavy work. It is a factory job.
Mhm.
We do our best to, stay cooled off and happy and entertained, and have we try to have fun at our job at Gotta Groove. Like it's not like, we're and stay productive at the same time. So
Yeah,
it's a really good crew at our shop, and for quality assurance, like they're really on top of their business. So every time that they get a record, they take a stack of records from the press. They look at the top one, they take them back to their room, they take that top record and they listen to the lead in, all the gaps, listen to the lead out, flip it over, same thing, and then they'll start listening at 45 RPM where they left off before they walked out of that room. So they check the alignment on every single one of those stacks. So the die alignment is being checked probably every 20 minutes or so on every single press. So
and how often do they give you feedback, Heath? Like, or if they're hearing something that's audible, and like let's just talk about, the QA department comes by and they see some stitching that's audible. So like how big of a monkey wrench does that throw into your actual like daily routine? Like what happens when you get feedback with an audible error?
So one of the worst things that a press operator wants to see is a QA person come out, pick up their stack, go back to their room, and immediately come back out to them. So we're like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, I've
But,
been that person too, so I know.
Yeah. So so the press operator and the QA person, they're a team.
Mhm.
A press operator can't make records without a QA person. A press operator can't make a long run of high quality passing records without a QA person. So we encourage that relationship of communication with QA and pressing. So a press operator, when they see the QA person come out, they're like, how's everything running? And then a QA person will be like, everything's running fine. Or QA will come out and say, from their last stack, they'll be like, hey, I had 2 double labels in that stack, can you keep an eye on it or whatever. So it's always like constant feedback and communication throughout the day from QA to pressing. And I think that's it. That's key. And that's just the way that it has to happen. That's how we make records. It's QA folks are a part of our machine, basically. Yeah.
And when issues arise and QA is listening, how does it, like, what is a time frame of you getting feedback and you fixing the potential problem? Obviously that varies depending on what it is. Cause I think, people are always like, oh, pressing plants aren't pressing records quick enough or whatever. And it's always like, well, we can't press it any faster than the cycle time, which
Right.
was 30 to 40 seconds. So
Yeah.
like, let's say an issue arises, and then how long does it take typically for you to dial something in?
Man, I got to tell you, it depends from record to record. Like I've had just last week, we had a test press. We had to run 70 cycles just to make the stitching go away.
Yeah.
So when we do that though, and we have to troubleshoot like that just on a test press, we always make a note of what press we were running it on. And then we make a note of the issue on the job jacket. So in 3 months down the road, when the operator is about to set that job up in the press, they can read all those notes and be like, okay, and then you don't have to run 70 cycles to dial it in. You can you have like a base point, and then you can dial in from there, and hopefully there's no issues after that. So, and like I said, sometimes things run better on an SMT than they do on a Hamilton. Right. So sometimes for those jobs, we'll just immediately just put it on an SMT.
Well, and is the SMT the automatic?
SMTs and Hamiltons are both automatics. We have all automatic presses at our shop.
Yeah,
we don't have.
Can you discuss the difference between an automatic and a manual?
So the manual press, usually you'll have 2 presses caddy corner from each other, and in the center of those presses you'll have an extruder. And if you're doing one color, I think the extruders are set up differently at different shops. I'm not super familiar with manuals, except that I did run a manual press just to make sure that it was up and running before we ended up selling it. But we had a press from the historic Bodie record pressing plant here in Cleveland. So
that's for New Homies Gazetland, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we sold the press a while back, but we ended up having a little bit of hardware left over, which is those book molds that I sent. Yeah. That's so rad. I'm really stoked to see those things back in the press making some records. So hopefully we get to see that soon. Yeah. But so the manual press, the operator cannot leave or you're not making records. Manual presses now are the new builds. And I think it's just the new builds. Is that right, you guys? Or the manual presses, or
that's all I'm aware of. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're putting the labels on by hand, the A side and the B side. You're pressing a button for the extruder to extrude a biscuit, and then you're taking that biscuit, placing it inside the dies, and then you're pressing a button to have the dies close and press the record. I think the cycle times on those are right around 1:30, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have another press that you're going to do the same thing to. So you're basically, pivoting, back and forth, like running 2 presses. And so when the record presses from a manual, you pull that off by hand, set it on a trimmer table, and then you trim the flash off, and then you pull it from the trimmer table and put it on a stack. So that's all manual. So the automatic press, it brings the labels forward for us. It drops them right on the pin with the biscuit in the center, and through a series of limit and micro switches that get met, the record presses, and it's just like constantly just like banging out records, every 30-40 seconds.
Yeah. And so like with those, when people want all the specialty effects, you need to have potentially 2 extruders to do like a half and half. And you're like cutting and manipulating those biscuits or pucks. So that's why they're more expensive and take more time.
Yeah.
and little
Oh
pellets.
yeah. Oh yeah. With the hand built, that's majority of that is all handmade.
Yeah.
Literally handmade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
Uh,
what you are known for.
Yes. That's my favorite. That's my favorite part of the job.
yeah.
Yeah. The wax mage stuff. Yeah. I love playing with colors.
Yeah, totally.
You mentioned test pressings too, and I think that's another area that is good to kind of discuss. What are things that you would be able to manipulate on a test pressing versus what would be an audio thing in a test pressing?
Again, it goes back to the dishing, stitching, warping, stock marks, and that kind of stuff. Sometimes there'll be like from the plating plan. It's very rare that it happens anymore, but there'd be like a little burr in a groove, not unusual or uncommon, um, and it'll cause the needle to jump out of the groove, or it just sounds like a little pop. That would be something in plating. So we have had to send stuff back to get replated to get a new stamper.
Mhm.
There have been, I think, only on 2 occasions ever. Somehow the audio got cut at the wrong speed, and I'm not talking like 33 and a third to 45 RPM to 75, but it was more like 34 and a third, and we caught it and we're like, what the heck, this is really
Weird.
weird. Yeah. So and I think it was, it's usually folks that are like new in training or whatever. Like I don't know how it happens. I do not cut lacquers. I just know that I heard it and I was like, that's weird. So I don't know how they got there, but I've heard that. So that would be a thing that would need to be recut. um
Is
and
is there anything, because we've talked before about how we can't adjust levels in pressing, like once it's
correct.
cut, we're basically just a copy
That's it.
machine.
Yep.
But is there any music that you feel presses better than others?
I'm gonna say I have the best time with anything metal that is cut loud.
Mhm.
Those are, it just like hides anything and everything that could possibly happen. Like you could see a scratch going down the side of the record. We would never pass that, but there'd be a whole ass scratch down there, and you're just like, I do not even hear that at all, except in the gaps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
The louder the program material, and that's again, as the resident cutting person on the old show here, everybody wants longer and longer sides, but that's when you have to make those
that's when you sacrifice.
configuration.
That's when you
Exactly.
sacrifice your levels. Yeah, you're right.
That's exactly it. So I mean, you want the best sounding record out there. You want it to be loud as hell. I mean, you don't want to hear the surface noise of the record or any air any errors at all. I mean,
Yeah.
18 minutes, baby.
Yeah. So some of the struggles that we've had with some music has been like, like a whole album of piano,
Yep.
just because it's quiet, or like a quartet kind of stuff has been difficult. And then there's some ambient music, and again those long playing sides that you can hear everything, all the surface noise and everything that comes naturally on a record.
Yeah.
But
Material.
yeah, but it gets masked by how loud the lacquer is cut.
Hmm.
Totally.
I think a lot of times too. So we have like, really nice record players.
Mhm.
Not like state of the art record players, but we have like a good
Solid.
record. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's a good system, a good record player. It's not something that, it's like what most, it's affordable record player, but it's not a cheap record player. So if someone takes a record and throws in a cheap record player, it's probably gonna sound like shit. So um, sometimes when we have someone who's like, it doesn't sound good, we'll ask, well, what record player are you using?
Yeah.
And can you try playing it on other record players?
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, do
That's
your
our-
friends have another record player? Can you go to your buddy's house? Can you try it here? Can you try it there? Because sometimes it might be they don't have a good needle. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just like not a great record. Like if you're, have one of those, portable record players and you're trying to play it on that, it's probably not going to sound great. You can play a record on that. If you want to take your record to the beach, that's the one to use. But um,
But
you
I mean,
know,
and maybe I don't know if Ray wants to include this. Maybe this is a hot take, but like I find that there's a very particular kind of people that make a very particular kind of music, and perhaps they're a little bit more persnickety about their test pressings and their overall quality than others. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's
we
some
we
bands, there's some bands and some people that are like, oh my God, we have a record. This is awesome. And then there's the other types.
Right.
I think
Oh, yeah.
we appreciate folks like that and the challenge that it gives us to really like listen to something, to like be able to research, well, what is that sound? What is it that they don't like about this? Is it something that we need to take into consideration down the road for other stuff? So we learn when we have to work within those specific parameters with some folks. So while it can be a headache sometimes, it can also be a learning experience.
Oh, 100%. For sure.
Yeah.
How do you think that things have changed, or how have you seen them change since the pandemic?
I think well, the industry boomed during the pandemic because everybody was staying home and, writing music, recording music, and then completely backed up the turnaround times for every record pressing plant in the world, which is so freaking awesome. But then we were seeing like other record pressing plants at breakneck speed opening up,
Right.
which also is awesome because then it shortens our turnaround time. We're not at Gotta Groove. We're not worried about running out of work. There's plenty of work for everyone out there. I think the changes that we need to see are, more infrastructure support for the record pressing plants. So, Gotta Groove is going to be doing locker distribution, and we're also going to be, making stampers as soon as we get really, really good at it. You know how we like our high quality. But I mean, we are making stampers right now and using them at our shop. We just want to make sure it's like the highest quality for everyone out there who does want to use Gotta Groove electroplating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think more support in the infrastructure in the industry, I think, is key. I haven't seen any negative downturns at all in our industry. Like it's all been, just like booming business for everyone the whole way around. And just like folks collecting records, seeing records when I go into Target, in the record section there, just like, everywhere, like vinyl's back and big and back. And I love that.
Awesome. Before we close out, what do you think is one thing that like you want people to know about the folks that press their records? Like, what do you think? Like, what's that job like?
So I can only speak for Gotta Groove Records and maybe a little bit also for Third Man because I know a couple people that work there and it's like the coolest freaking place on the planet. I love swinging through there. Everybody's so nice, and I like I said, I have a couple of friends there that I just think it's really cool. But at our shop and the press operators, I don't think there's one press operator that's not an artist and or a musician. So we are not just factory workers at a plastic mold injection plant. We are also folks that write, draw, record, play instruments, and press records, our own records at our shop. So we really, really care about what we're doing and what we're putting out. We treat every record as if it was our own record, that we were pressing our own record and setting up our own record. So I know that that's a vibe at Gotta Groove Records. I would hope it can be somewhat of a vibe at other places, because I feel like the folks that are most passionate about what they do are on the creative spectrum within the industry.
Totally. Yeah. I know that's the same for us too. Everybody is
Yeah.
like either loves music, is creative, or is in a band.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's key to be like, like emotionally connected to the work you do. Like being able to do something that you love is like unheard of pretty much anymore. But like, I don't think I couldn't do anything else anywhere else.
Yeah.
I absolutely love what I do, and also for the folks that I work for. I just love the company I work for.
Awesome.
I think that's the biggest thing. It's like people don't do these jobs because it's like an easy job. It's a tough job. You've got so many things going on, lots of things to keep in the top of mind. I mean, safety at bare minimum too, but like,
Yeah.
looking after all of these things, and people just like,
And you're on your feet. Like,
yeah,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
on
All
your feet.
day.
It's a factory. You're like, it's loud. There's,
Yep.
temperature changes. You have to kind of be like a low key mechanic to be able to
Yeah,
understand
you do.
how
There
to
are
be
always little
involved.
adjustments that need to be made. And then,
Exactly.
but then also having the foresight to know, like, okay, this is more than a little adjustment. Let me go get the mechanic and have him watch this. Have
Yeah.
them watch this. And the other thing too is like the multitasking. So I have one press operator that is running two presses at a time.
Yeah.
So they're like bouncing back and forth. Like sometimes you have a job that ends the jobs end both at the same time. So you have to like two setups that have to happen. And what ends up happening is another press operator will swing over to the other press and start helping out. So like everyone's like helping each other out and trying to keep everything running all the time. So it really is a lot of camaraderie and a lot of multitasking, and it's like I said, hot and heavy work. And yeah, you're on your feet all day. You're gonna get your 10,000 steps in. I promise you that.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Like it seems to me that sometimes people think that it's just like press a button, here's a record, and they don't
Yeah,
understand the minutia and the like care and attention that goes into every single step of that. So
yeah.
I mean, that's one of the wonderful reasons that we wanted to have you on, to be able to kind of
Yeah.
auto press, not autopilot.
Right. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's not.
I do wish for autopilot sometimes.
Yeah, it's not like a little donut maker where it's just like the little conveyor belt.
Donuts.
But that's the thing. I mean, like the thing that especially because now I'm working in a record store, so I'm hearing feedback
Yeah.
more often now, which I'm really stoked about. And I love being able to be that person that's like, hey, no, it takes like 27 people to make that record that you're complaining about, sir. So maybe you should just have like a little bit more care and attention and like kindness for all of the people that are involved in making this thing that you're wanting to buy. But like, that's it, right? Like, I'm just like, man, treat those people the best, because they're the ones that at the end of the day are like really in charge of like what is going on with that record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I'm glad that we were able to get you to tell us what a day in the life of a record pressing operator looks like.
Was that enough? It's terrible. It's the hardest job on the planet. We're so tired. Feed us.
I do have one additional question for you, Keith.
Sure.
How long do you find that stampers generally last with that kind of a beating that they're taking with that kind of pressure?
We count on 1,000 cycles per stamper.
Mhm.
So if we have a job that's 1,500 records, we'll usually get 2 sets of stampers with that. And sometimes because we do a lot of the handmade like custom work, if there's a lot of customs on the set of stampers, we'll get an extra set,
Right.
just in case.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Heath.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to talk to you again, Jen and Robin. And we should shorten our span between this time and next time.
Yeah.
We should probably meet up somewhere and get some tacos, margaritas, and call it.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Women in Vinyl podcast. You can join our ever-growing list of sponsors. Other record labels: Selector, Couple Design, Eargasm, Groove Washer, Glowtronics, New Gen Audio, and Vinyl Revolution Record Show. And thanks for sponsoring the show. Hey, as always, you can join our conversation on Instagram or send us a note at media@womeninvinyl.com. Clock us. Send us info. If you have a question, we got the answer, or we'll find it. We won't lie to you. And check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes, the store, the job board, and the library of resources. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl. Hey, guess what? This episode, 45 minutes. You know there was more. You want more? You get more. Go to patreon.com and you can get more. And you'll find all the B-sides, the deep cuts, and the amazing extras, including longer episodes, and contribute to the creation of scholarships and educational opportunities to further the demystification, the infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the vinyl making space, decreasing those turnaround times every week. Yeah, we love your records. We want you to love them too. womeninvinyl.com.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.